Is it 6:30? It's just 6:30.
Yes, it's
John,
13 people so far.
okay. John, do you want to give the opening rules and then I will get started?
Oh yeah. Um, Greeting everybody. Welcome. If this is your first time joining us virtually, you will notice that you're all currently muted and will remain muted throughout the meeting, except for co-chairs and any presenters who will be presenting throughout the agenda. Following the presentations, as we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the react icon on your device and pressing the raised hand button, not the wave or thumbs up button, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it second time, your hand will go down. If you are calling on your phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask for questions of the co-chairs. They will not see the chats. If you are using an older version of Zoom, you will need to go to the Persons section, where you will find the raised hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat with me for any technical support.
Thank you so much, John, as always, and Will Brightbill, our district manager. This meeting came because we have a new commissioner of police, the New York NYPD, Jessica Tisch. We know her name from sanitation and from other things. And she has given several speeches, including the state of the NYPD, with some new initiatives. We also know that crime has been an issue on subways, whether it's reality or perception. Today I heard great news, and we're just so pleased that we have some major players in our New York PD coming to talk about these issues. We have the Deputy Inspector Neil Zuber of our own 19th precinct, as well as the Captain Timothy, oh, I hope I don't, Magliani.
Aglienti.
Magliani, I'm sorry, I'm going to mess that up again. I'm very, very bad with languages, of the 20th Central Park precinct, to discuss issues. Just to tell you some of my issues, I've never figured out the interrelationship between the the police department, the DA's office, the judges, the city, the state, and possibly even federal. We hear so much about they each have something to say and how do they interact. And of course, to start talking about some of the initiatives that our new commissioner has discussed. So thank you. I don't know who wants to begin or how you want to do it, but we'll hold questions to the end. And thank you so much for coming. I think you probably have some busy time to do, am I right? And I just appreciate it so much, and the community appreciates it. So I don't know which one of you wants to start talking about what's happening.
If you want me to start from the park, I will.
Sure.
Central Park. I know there was high profile stuff about robberies that occurred in Central Park last year. But we were given extra resources from the department for a long time, and it really suppressed the robberies, and robberies from August on have gone down in the park. We don't get extra patrol right now as we were getting. It is the winter months. But for the most part, robberies have continued to trend downward. So we're not taking robberies in the park like we were. We currently, patrol the park. We work with parks enforcement for quality of life issues in the park, which deal with a lot of the pedicab stuff. We're currently working with the Mayor's Office of Public Safety, an initiative called Every Park Counts, where we are working directly with multiple agencies to improve Central Park. Quality of life issues like pedicabs. I know sometimes they don't really affect the residents because the residents don't really ride pedicabs. It's more of a tourist thing, I think, that they prey on. But the illegal vending on the streets and on the sidewalks and in front of the Met, we deal with that. We work with Inspector Zaruba and his team at the 19th precinct with all kinds of crime reduction and quality of life issues. noise complaints and all that stuff. You know, we're putting together a noise task force to work with DEP and in the coming summer months with noise violations and all ongoing in the park, along with many other events. And you know, crime is down in the borough. Right now, when we talk about index crime, we are even in the park, but we only had 3 index crimes so far this whole entire year for the first 37 days. Well, now we took it a 4th crime, but most of them are close to arrest. 3 out of the 4 are close to arrest. Obviously, we always work with our partners in the DA's office. There's, you know, a supervisor that covers this area and community liaisons from the DA's office. We work with them to prosecute, you know, arrests we know or cases that we have coming in or arrests we're planning to make. We coordinate with them, always trying to get the best possible outcomes for prosecutions. And you know, we always work with our partners at every level, federal, state, local, DA's office and stuff like that. I know one of the questions posed was regarding immigration enforcement. Immigration enforcement is a civil matter, and the department does not participate in civil enforcement of immigration laws. And that's just standard procedure right now for the department.
Just so if ICE comes in, you have nothing to do with it?
Well, first off, I don't know why they would come to the park. We don't have any residents in the park. So,
Okay, so it would be the
yeah.
park.
Yeah, so usually not, but we don't assist ICE in any way. The only scenario we would ever assist a federal agent enforcing civil immigration law is if they themselves were the victim of a crime. Say if one of them was actually assaulted, then we would assist them, but it would have to be them being physically assaulted.
Okay.
That would be the only way to make sure that they were not, you know, the victim of a crime, you know, injured in any way. But we don't assist them in making apprehensions.
Thank you. Inspector Zuber, you could talk about our whole community. Is Inspector Zuber unmuted?
He is unmuted.
Is he here? He was.
Yeah, he hears us.
Yes,
I think.
You don't see him?
No, he's on camera.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he could hear us. Oh, I think his mic's not going through. Yes, you're unmuted. It's not letting you speak. What's going on?
I wonder if he gets off the video, whether it would make it better. I don't know if that will help. Do you hear us?
He hears us, yes. I asked him to unmute himself. Now I mute him and unmuted him to see if that works.
I wonder if you should get off and come back on again, if that would help.
I see now. I think he's.
You think what? I'm going to change my gallery. Is he coming back on? We don't hear.
Hello.
Ah, we
Well,
hear
this
you
is this
perfectly.
is Richard. I'm the community ambassador. So I believe the host has to unmute DI Zuber in order for him to have the capacity to go ahead and address everyone.
But we
I think
did
that's okay. So we'll just double check one more time, see if DI Zuber can go ahead and join.
maybe you
Thank
can
you.
help us. Would you help us?
Sure. Oh, well, the host. Yeah, I don't have host privileges. That would be John. John has the host privileges.
Oh, John,
I'm gonna unmute his other. He's calling us on, so
Okay, how about now?
yes.
Wonderful.
oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Apologies for that.
No, I'm sorry about that.
Okay. The world of technology. We love it and we hate it, right?
We spent most of the day on other teams and Zoom meetings, so I know whatever the hiccup was.
Right.
So you mentioned several topics. I know Captain Maglianti was speaking about them earlier. Which one would you like me to start with? I know most of your
Well, I have a list of things that I've gotten from the state of the NYPD, from what the commissioner talked about. And some of it is obvious, but what is being done? So recidivism is one major issue that we hear. And we hear it, she mentions it, the mayor mentions it all the time. And again, why? Why is it that we hear that somebody finally kills somebody or throws somebody into the subway has been caught 3 previous times? And that's one of the issues that we hear over and over.
And certainly, if some of our participants here this evening were joining us at our community council meeting this week, we spoke about this at length.
Yes, I know. I had something else to do. I've come several times.
So recidivism is definitely an issue that we're having. And the fact is that we are, just as you said, arresting the same individuals numerous times. And they're let back out onto the street. And the problem with that is it's one thing for us to arrest them again, but for every one of those arrests, there's a victim that we would like to see have their time, their say, their day in court, so that they can get some kind of restitution for what's happening. At this week's community council meeting, we actually spoke about 3 individuals who we arrested in the last month for numerous burglaries, what we call a burglary pattern. Anytime that the same individual is committing the same crime numerous times, we create a pattern so that we can lump them together for a bigger prosecution once we make the arrest. These 3 individuals together have been arrested more than 50 times for burglary alone since 2024. One of them we arrested on December 29th for a total of 12 burglaries here in the 19th precinct, spanning just a couple of weeks. Because of a loophole in the new bail system, the new bail reform laws, he was not eligible for bail. So he was held for a very short time on a parole detainer because he was actually on parole for previous numerous arrests for burglary. He was let out about 10 days later with no bail. And a week after that, we arrested him for an additional 5 burglaries that he committed in that very short window of time. So between him and the other 2 individuals, that's over 50 victims that we've had here in the 19th precinct since 2024. I'm very happy to say that we are getting cooperation with the district attorney's office on most of these cases, if not all of them. Again, because of changes in the laws and the bail laws and the procedurals, sometimes they will not draw up what we call draw up and prosecute each of the cases, but they'll choose 3 or 4 of the strongest cases. And in these instances, they actually did draw up all of them, and he was still not bail eligible. After the second arrest, because he still had open cases from just 2 weeks ago, meaning those cases were still making their way through the courts, he was bail eligible. In this instance, the district attorney's office requested a very high bail, and the judge decided to lower that bail. So he is being held in on bail, but it was not as high, which means it's more likely that he will be able to establish bail at some point. And his record shows that he will most likely come out and start doing the same business as usual. So that's just in the burglaries, but we are seeing it across the board. And when you're talking about the Upper East Side, we're always talking about theft. We're talking about predominantly retail theft. And because many of those cases don't rise to the felony level, they're lower level because of the property value. They're what we call pettit larcenies. It's much, much more difficult to get them remanded so that they actually stay into the system.
But the commissioner said she's addressing it. What do we do about it? It must be so frustrating to you, and it's frustrating for all of us that hear it.
It's terribly frustrating, and it's very disheartening for the officers who are, in many instances, as these burglaries are spiking, we're changing the tours for the officers so that they're taking them away from their families to work overnight tours, because that's when those crimes are predominantly happening. They do their job. They make the arrests. They know who they're looking for. There's many, many hours, man hours of not just on patrol, but on the investigative side, what our detectives are doing. And it's not an issue with the police. And at that point, it's not an issue with the district attorney. We have to work within the constraints of the laws that are established. And when the bail reform laws were passed in Albany, that changed the game for all of us, not just here in New York City, but of course we are feeling it here.
Yeah, so this is when I started off saying the interaction between the city, the state, judges, and so on. There seems to be this balance that is very difficult, and yet I had hoped that there would be something. So is there any suggestion that's being done about recidivism?
Well, what we did in the police department is we started paying special attention with the DA's office here in Manhattan and the other boroughs around the city. And we started putting pressure on them to actually combine these cases so that we could get prosecution. We're at the point now where with the DA's offices on board, and they are seeing it from our standpoint, and they are stepping up and they are helping us with prosecution.
Right. So there is some.
I want to ask a question.
Sure.
Does a person have to accumulate a certain amount of crimes to make it a felony before they get in jail for a longer period than 10 days? How much is how much is they have to steal or make a crime to how much money is that? I mean, you say petty and then then it's felony. Is there money and there's still more?
Okay, there's two different ways that a crime, a property crime like that can elevate to a felony level. If you're talking about just stealing, say for instance, shoplifting, anything below the $1,000 mark is considered a petty larceny. That's a misdemeanor. Anything above the $1,000 mark is a grand larceny. However,
what if they do it 2 or 3 times and add up more than 5,000?
Each individual.
Or they just do it single.
Thank you. Right. Do you want to answer?
Now, to find out if the person is doing it and they do it under 1,000, every time they do it 5, 6, 7 times. Does it get accumulated until it becomes a felony, or each time they do it, it goes back to under the $1,000, and so they don't get anything done?
Each individual incident is its own crime. So if they steal $900 3 times, that's 3 misdemeanors. There's not a felony.
Oh,
Oh my
add them up
goodness.
together.
How do we change that?
Those are laws that have to be passed. And once again, the police department is constrained within the laws that are passed.
And the laws are on the state level, am I right? Yes, okay. So we know what to do about that. Can I go on to another? I'm going on to another issue, and then we'll open it up to the public. The other issue,
Okay, good.
The other issue was quality of life that the commissioner talked about quite a bit, mostly on subways. I'm wondering if it's extending past the subways. And yet she said that we have to be mindful of those committing it as well as the victim. Some of the quality, what is happening on the subways? I gather that crime has gone way down because of the increase of the police department. But what type of quality of crime and what are they actually doing and what will it result in terms of criminal behavior?
So when we look back at 2024, the entire year of 2024, the 19th precinct, which as you know is a very large precinct here in Manhattan, from 59th Street to 96th Street, we accounted for 37 crimes that happened in the subway system. That's 37 for all of our subway stations in the entire precinct for the entire 12 months of 2024. Of those 37, 19 of them happened on moving trains. So what we've done recently is actually increase the amount of personnel that the police department is putting into the subway system. Every time an academy class graduates, the new recruits come to the precincts and they're generally put out into a field training unit. Here in the 19th precinct, we always use that field training unit into the areas where they can do the most good. Predominantly, you'll see them into our retail corridors because that's where you have the heaviest traffic at the heaviest time, and that's where the majority of our crimes are committed, whether they're against the businesses or against individuals who are unsuspecting and they're walking in those corridors. With this new influx into the subway system, that field training unit has been taken away and actually transferred out of the precinct. So those officers are no longer part of the precinct. They are now responsible in a transit district, which is like a police precinct that just covers the subways, and they're broken up geographically around the city as well.
Does that mean you're expecting an increase in crime in burglaries?
Unfortunately, once you take away manpower and once you take away the omnipresence that we have, then we are changing our resources and our deployment so that we can account for that as well.
Homelessness is related. I remember in beginning days of defund the police and so on, it was supposed to be social workers that did it. What is your role with homelessness, homeless people that mentally ill and so on, and what do we do with it? And it's back to quality of life. I've seen homeless people sleeping on the subway to some degree. I feel they need some place to sleep, but we don't have places for them to sleep. What do we do? What is the connection with crime, perception of crime, and so on?
I'm glad you said perception because that's exactly what it is. And it
That's
doesn't,
what I tell all my friends because I ride on subways and buses. I do not drive, and I either walk or take public transportation, and I'm safe, and I'm not young.
but whether subways or if it's the sidewalk in front of your house. Now, if your routine takes you from the front step of your building and you make a right and you go get a bagel and then you get on the bus and you go to work every day and there's no homeless people there, you would think that the entire neighborhood looks like that. There's no homeless people there. But if your routine takes you to a left and down another block where there's the same two people who are setting up a mattress and that's where they're sleeping every day, you would suspect that. The fact is that the NYPD used to have a unit called the Homeless Outreach Unit, and it was specially trained officers who responded to all 5 boroughs, and they responded specifically for this. With the defund the police movement, that was one of the first units that was stopped. So the onus came back onto the precinct. With the social workers you spoke about, that never truly materialized. So now the way it works is our headquarters building, One Police Plaza, the people there will coordinate with the outside agencies. Those outside agencies like sanitation, Department of Health and Mental Services will set up appointments where they will be at a certain location and the precinct actually takes people off of patrol to meet with them so that they can go and address this. Now, many times what they do is they approach the homeless people and they ask them, would you like services? They are free to decline those services. And unless there's certain criteria that's met, like they're setting up an encampment that is spanning across the sidewalk, there's really not much else that can be done. In the event that that encampment is expanding and it's sprawling across the sidewalk, it's impeding pedestrian traffic or something else, that's when our partners in sanitation will actually start to remove those things.
But can you talk? I know that you're not part of the subway police. Am I right about that? But what is happening on the subway? I mean, the commission spent a lot of time talking about quality of life in terms of that.
We here in the precincts, we're very uninvolved in the subway system. That's the transit that do that. We will respond if they need assistance, but we don't ride the trains here in the precincts, and we're not going into the stations for the most part.
You also talked about, spent a lot of time talking about recidivism and the quality of life and so on. The governor's money that has brought police, so you're saying it's a two-edged sword. They are in, and I gather that the crimes that we've plummeted the amount of crime in the subway, but you're saying it's taking away. It's a fungible amount. It's like money. If you take it from one place, you put it someplace else, you're going to be down on the others. What you need, but she talked about hiring how many thousands of new police?
So listen, if not a police commander around the country that would say, no, we want fewer officers to report to us.
Do you think so? And are you getting them? Is it that we don't have the budget for it, or they're not applying for it, or?
The budget definitely has something to do with it. But you're absolutely right. When you talk about the defund the police movement, we're talking about a generation now who, for the last 10 years, have been going to schools and colleges and hearing it on social media and in the news how the police are the enemy. So people who in the past may have wanted to follow this career path, by and large, they are not. So I was the first class hired after 2001, after September 11th. My class was almost 3,000 officers. Now we're putting in classes of about 300. So as those large classes from 20 years ago are retiring, we are replenishing, but we're replenishing at a slower rate. So really every officer is that much more important now.
And so what are you doing about it? Are there campaigns out or there?
Absolutely. We're trying to hire, but it's not just the NYPD. Now we get officers from around the country, as you can imagine, who visit New York City. And it doesn't matter if they're in a large city on the West Coast or in the central part of the country or smaller county sheriffs. They're all saying that they're having the same issues. Interestingly, we get tourists visiting from other countries, and they say that the same stress is happening there, that they're not able to recruit and they're having a hard time retaining their officers there. So just for instance, when one of my predecessors was here in the 19th precinct in 2023, there were 225 officers that were assigned here. We're down to 127 now.
You have a frustrating job.
It has
That's a frustration, but we thank you for it. I'm coming away a little bit more down than I was. I listened to the commissioner. She talked about all the things that are going to happen. Of course, she doesn't have a huge amount of time before there's a change of administration. Well, maybe not. We don't know if there will be a change of administration, but possibly. What can you tell us that's hopeful?
I think it's very important to realize that the plan is the first part. You have to have a plan in order to act upon it, but it's not a magic wand that we can wave and say that it's now being enacted. If something were to change and we were able to hire 10,000 people, that's still not 10,000 people that are here on the streets today. There's a long training process that goes through. We have to vet them. We have to do the background checks. And then we have to put them through the police academy where we actually train them for 6 to 7 months. Once they're out of the police academy, then they come to the precincts and they go through a field training, which is the last part of their training. And at that point, you'll start to see a surge in manpower on the streets. So having is absolutely the part. Having a that lawmakers are going to get behind and are going to start making it so it might be a more beneficial job to take, a more beneficial career path. I think that would be a huge part.
And another question, what we also hear is that judges, in fact, I heard this from a judge friend of mine, that it's the judges that will say whether there should be bail, even if they're bail eligible. Some judges do not give bail or give, as you pointed out, such low bail that, you give $1, anybody would be able to pay for it. Is there anything we should be doing in terms, this is judicial system, a season, to make that an issue?
One of those 3 individuals that I was speaking about earlier, who we arrested on the burglary recidivists, despite being arrested on 6 burglaries, earlier in the month, and despite the fact that he has a prior history of being arrested for over 30 burglaries, the judge decided that he was going to release him on supervised release. Mind you, he's homeless. He doesn't have a place to stay. He would not give us an address where he could stay. Now, supervised release means we would be able to visit him at home and to make sure he's minding his P's and Q's. The judge disregarded that, and basically knowing that there was no way for us to follow up on the supervised release, let him back out. And it was just a matter of days later when he was arrested for 8 additional burglaries. So I said earlier that we're having a lot of good luck and a lot of good fortune with the district attorney's offices helping us to get good prosecutions. One of the things that the department has directed us to do now is to keep track of which judges are assigning low bail or foregoing bail whatsoever, so that the higher ups in the department can take their concerns to local politicians.
Thank you. I know some of the politicians that are interested in this. Anything else you would like to add to talk about our community specifically, or?
It is not all doom and gloom. I can promise you that. We finished 2024 with a record low crime here in the 19th precinct, and as it was largely throughout the city. That's on top of lows in previous years. So as I said earlier, every single officer is responsible for more and is more important than they ever were at any time in the past. Now, despite the fact that we are lower in manpower, the average officer is actually doing quite a bit more. We talk about whether it's arrests or summonses. These are the things that we can quantify, the things that we can say, this is what they're actively doing to address the crimes and the quality of life issues. We expect that to continue. We're starting off 2025 citywide, but also here in the 19th precinct with very, very good numbers, very, very low crime reports. It's too early to take a victory lap because there's a lot of factors that could be at play, such as, a historically cold winter might be doing some things. But as we're deploying our personnel, it's important to note that We have to deploy to where each individual officer can do the most good and at the times in which they can do the most good. So if that means taking some officers temporarily out of this precinct and placing them where it's determined they have to do more good, well, that's really the best thing for us to do. And if it, heaven forbid, there comes a time where we require that assistance, one of the benefits of being part of such a large organization is there are resources that they can bring into our area, such as Captain Maglienti said they did in Central Park last summer.
I just want to go back to Wilma's question. I'm trying to remember, we had a meeting similar to this, I don't know, somewhere within COVID, and we don't know what year that is with it, where the question of looting came up. And they had said that what they have changed is to aggregate the amount. So it's still 500 this time, 300 next time, 500 next time. It isn't three separate things, but it's $1,300. Is that never happened?
At the time during COVID, when you're talking about those, also the 20th precinct on the west side, and we did have certain criteria that would fit. So if the same individual can be proven to have gone to the same store, the same location, and committed that crime, there are certain criteria, and I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, where the district attorneys may actually pursue a higher charge. But I may have been oversimplifying it when I said earlier that each instance is its own. What I was saying is if I go into Duane Reade and steal a 6-pack of beer, and then I go to CVS and steal a 6-pack of beer, it's not the same. If I go to different Duane Reads, if I go to the one on 72nd Street and then to the one on 86th Street, it's going to be completely separate. So where that really came in was some of the higher end establishments where they were stealing clothing. If I walk into the Gap and I steal 50 pair of jeans, regardless of their sizes, you can't say that it's because I was starving and I had to feed my children or I had to clothe my children. They were taking it someplace so they can sell them and make a profit. So if that same person came back to that same retail establishment, times we would do our best to bundle them together.
And I'm going to say one other thing that this committee has worked very hard on 91st Street. They were supposed to be a safe haven for the homeless that were entrenched and maybe not eligible for regular shelters. The city canceled that, or it was canceled. I don't know why. Another agency came in that was supposed to be a safe haven, dealing on a long-term basis with them. The last minute before it was supposed to open, it was canceled. Is this something that would help the police if we had a place for the mentally ill homeless to go to? Wouldn't they?
It is quite possible, but it's also possible that you might see, for a time at least, a deterioration in the quality of life in that area because they're not going to stay inside. They're not locked inside of their rooms, which means have any addictions or if they have any other proclivities, that's what's now going to be in that neighborhood and it's going to be centered there.
That was some of the problems that happened. I thank you so much. John, would you help us with questions? You see better than I do. Do we have anybody who, I see Judy Schneider has her hand up.
Mhm.
You want to mute Judy?
Yes. I have a question for both of our speakers. Actually, Inspector Zuber, coming to the monthly 19th precinct meetings has led me to believe that the community board needs to take action about the reform laws that the state has passed. It's really a state issue. And Barbara, I don't know if we
Have a resolution. I think we should.
Yes, if we do it tonight or if we have to post, I don't know what the rules are.
Posting, we posted and I listed all the issues.
then
I don't think we
I
have to do
really
any
think
more than that.
not only should we pass a strong resolution requesting that our state representatives look at the bail reform laws and talk to our commanding officers at the precincts, certainly in Manhattan, about the recidivism that's going on, because it can't just be happening in our precinct. Am I right about that, Inspector Zuber? It's happening.
Yes, you're absolutely 100% right, but it's not just New York City. If you talk to police officers in any part of the state or any other state who has passed similar laws, they're facing the same challenges that we are. I don't know. Listen, the correct answer is yes. It absolutely has to go through the.
Okay, so then for the city, and if we could get this passed, if the committee passes a resolution, it then, you may not know, it then goes to the full board to pass. And then we would really want Valerie to take this down to the borough president's meeting on Thursday morning after our full board, and try and get all the other community boards, certainly in Manhattan, to try and pass a similar resolution, because I think it would have much more meaning going to our elected officials if the different community boards in Manhattan stood behind us. So that's my number one.
Totally agree with you. Judy, can we wait for other questions? By the
Yes,
way,
and then I have a question for Captain
can I
Magliente.
just interrupt for one section? I would like to add something about judges. Maybe Inspector Zuber would help us with what we can do with the judges. But there's something about judges then getting in and having the free will to not follow what they can do in terms of it. So I don't know if that would be a resolution you would, want to add to the resolution separate, or feel we need to do it all, Judy.
I don't know.
I think it's two different things.
Inspector Zuber, if we pass a strong resolution about changing the bail laws, if they're changed, wouldn't the judges have to comply with the new laws if they were changed? Or if they were changed back to what they were?
Yeah, my understanding is that they would have to, or they would face whatever repercussions that judges face. When we were talking about it at the community council meeting this past week, a number of the people that were here that were participating said that during the last election, they don't remember even seeing any spaces to vote for judges. So they may be appointees at that point.
However, I think if we pass a resolution and can get the full board to support it, and then Valerie is willing to take it down to her meeting Thursday morning after the full board at the borough president's office where all the other boards are, I think that would be a really big step in the right direction.
Do you want to phrase it, or should we just vote on, or can we wait? Are there other questions, John?
I think Ellen Pallavi has her.
Yes.
And she's a
Ellen
public
is,
member yet, Ellen?
Okay, I get where this is coming from, Judy. I just want to like urge us to have be a bit more refined on this. I don't think we need to jump to. I think we need to have a discussion with the DA's office as well, because there's real reasons why they passed this bail reform. And we need to have a real serious discussion about this, not just jumping into saying, okay, this is the problem now, we need to change the law back.
Ellen, we invited the DA, by the way, and they didn't come. So we did invite the DA to come to talk about it. And it may not be to go back to the old ways. We can phrase it in a way of deciding it. I think the issue was that if you're poor, you can't afford the bail. And so Harvey Weinstein was walking the street while other people, and I think another thing, Inspector, that I wonder is the jail is just so horrible that people are there for a long time. We have increased the number of judges, which will help, not enough, so that they can have hearings that much quicker. That was one of the issues, I believe. Am I right, Inspector, that Harvey Weinstein was able to walk the streets, but others with a lesser crime were not able to, was the argument that they had.
Of talking points. There was a lot of things that made people feel better about voting a certain way. The simple fact is, before the laws changed, New York City was rated the safest big city in the country. We're all having this conversation for a reason. Everybody knows the word recidivism when 5 years ago we didn't. How many chances do you need? If there are no repercussions, then there's nothing to stop you from going out and committing more crimes. Criminals commit crimes. It's in their job description. If there's
And
no,
not just looting. I mean, there's serious crimes that they do also.
absolutely. Now, I'm not going to say that going back and rewinding the clock 15 years to the way things were then is necessarily the answer, but it is an answer. When you're talking about stop, question, and frisk, and you're talking about how many more people were going to Rikers at the time awaiting their trial, well, there was a reason for that. We talked about broken windows. The recent push towards neighborhood policing, towards the neighborhood coordination officer program, that's all well and good, and it's great. We never would have gotten to the point where that was even feasible if we hadn't driven crime down to a level where it was possible to try something new. We're seeing a resurgence in certain types of crime. We are absolutely seeing a resurgence in recidivism. I'm not going to say we have a crime problem, but we 100% do have a recidivist problem. When a small number of people are committing the majority of the crimes, well, there has to be some kind of repercussion for that. If there isn't, you're just encouraging them to do more. And remember, for every crime, there is a victim. You're encouraging them to go out and to create more victims.
It seems to me, Barbara, that if we put a resolution that stated, I don't know, after 3 times,
At
5 times, the same person
this,
is committing the same crimes,
I wouldn't give a
then
number.
they must, or, okay, then due to the recidivism rates that are being spoken about in the police precincts, we believe that there must be a change in the bail laws so that these people are not constantly committing the same crimes over and over. And the only way this can happen is if our state elected officials do something about it, because they're the ones that change the law.
Thank you, Judy. Do you have statistics, Inspector, of how many crimes there were? I know the commissioner talked about how many crimes are done by the same people over and over again. Like X number of people committed Y number of crimes.
No, that's unfortunately we just don't have the staff in each local precinct to accumulate that. It's something that goes down through
I'll
headquarters.
try to find it because I know she talked about it and it was shocking to hear it.
So we try individuals here, so I can talk at length about any of the, like, for instance, the 3 that I was speaking about earlier, because so intimately involved with that every step of the way. But it's a staggering number.
I remember hearing that somebody was killed by somebody that was caught several times before with a knife or a gun or something like that.
Correct.
It's one less person at a dinner table.
We generally, I don't want to say we make a joke out of it, but you'll hear kind of yelling once we make an arrest, and it's almost a little celebration when we get somebody who's in the Century Club. When, as soon as we arrest them and we bring them in and we run their history, they have over 100 prior arrests here in the city. It's not terribly uncommon, unfortunately. To have people with dozens of prior arrests is very, very common. That happens on a daily basis here, just in this precinct alone. So if it's happening here, it is most likely happening in the other 77 precincts.
Thank you. Any other questions before Judy? Let's listen to more questions or comments, and then I would like to get back to you if that's okay. John, is anybody else open? I don't see the, are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay. Okay,
I
Lorraine.
just think that I would like to do more research about reform to make sure that we do the right kind of future plans for about it.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Connect other communities
Well, I think what you're saying is that we should have a more
I
loosely
just think
defined
that it's
resolution that,
important. Husband,
okay. Um, uh, uh, we'll, okay, Richard Rivera, is that your name? Did I pronounce?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Guevara. I didn't have an opportunity to introduce myself, so I'll take the opportunity to do that now. My name is Richard Guevara. I'm the NYPD Community Ambassador for Manhattan
That's
North.
right. Thank you. That's right.
And so first and foremost, I want to thank this committee for having the great commanding officers that you have here. As you
Oh
can
my
see, they have
God.
a wealth of information and resources. And this is exactly the kind of work that I do, is to bring both community and law enforcement together to have these kind of dialogues. I'm a civilian member of service. I work with all the commanding officers from the 19th to the 34th precinct. I just wanted to share that there's a great deal of things that we've touched on here. Um, I attend all the community board district service cabinet meetings as well. So I have the opportunity to work with all the other city agencies. Um, I think the topic that we talked about a great deal and a great length of was quality of life. The commander from Central Park Precinct, Commander Maglienti, talked about the operations that go on there. Those are the kind of things that we can assist with, right? Um, as you heard DI Zuber talk about the manpower and some of the precincts out on how that's declined and how strategically we're looking to address some of those quality of life concerns. That's where I come in. That's where I can help the individual precincts. Um, when we look at some of those quality of life concerns, whether it's a homeless person, whether it's a sanitation issue, a derelict vehicle, things of that nature, through the mayor's office, we have something called Community Link, and where we do joint operations and bring all the other city agencies to help that local precinct to address some of those concerns. And so I'll share my contact information. I do share it with the community board chair and district manager. I attend those meetings monthly and I share the information and the opportunity to have just to create assistance and have that dialogue to help locally so that way we're redirecting those concerns to the correct agency. Perfect example is if you're having rat infestation and things of that nature, your natural response is to call 911. Why? Because they're the most responsive agency and they're going to come to aid you, right? But we should be calling sanitation to address that issue. And I think that's as we when we attend the precinct community council meetings, if you haven't had an opportunity, I suggest and I recommend you attend those. What a wealth of information. Oftentimes you have people presenting and sharing from different agencies what they do. This offers the opportunity to redirect those questions to them so that way your local commanders and officers can go ahead and do the work that they need to do. And we parcel out that request to the correct agency. So I just wanted to share that and thank you
Thank
all for having us here. And
I
I,
would
and I
like,
know I know we're ready to go ahead and start talking about passing resolutions.
right.
That might be for the latter part of your conversation. I want to respect the time of our commanding officers
Okay.
who are very busy as well. Thank you for
Okay.
your time.
But can I ask a quick question about what do you do about quality of life? So the commissioner talked about if somebody's sleeping on the train. What would you do if you see somebody sleeping on the train, taking up 3 seats on a subway, as an
Right.
example?
So perfect example for me, right? I ride subways as well. One of the first thing, like and I'm a civilian member of service, I would probably just flag down a police officer or someone who's there and just
Yes, but what would the police officer do?
bring their attention to the issue that's there at hand. Right now, if this is something that's chronic for quite some time, as DI Zuber indicated, that'll be a joint operations. You'll have those other city agencies, Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, Department of Homeless Services, they'll come together and law enforcement wouldn't lead that initiative. It would be those providers that are trained to address those concerns. They will lead that, but law enforcement will be there in the event that there might be a need for them to intercede. So that's the softer side would be the individual agency. They'll address those folks, see if they need that assistance, and law enforcement is there just to provide any assistance to, to protect not only themselves but the providers as well. So my recommendation would be as civilians and citizens flag down an officer, make sure you're safe first, and then get someone to help you out. That would be my recommendation.
But I mean, this person is not doing any harm. He's just taking up 3 seats. It's not pretty. It's not a comfortable thing. It's quality of life. A policeman comes along and sees it. Does it wake the person up and make him sit up? What do you do to make the quality of life?
So I'm gonna pause for a second because that's a different question for our commanding officer. But I will say this is something to keep in mind, folks. It is not a crime to be homeless. Let's remember that. These folks probably need assistance. They probably need some help. And we just try to get them that help. But if we begin to think from that compassionate way, a humanistic way, that they're not committing a crime, they just might need help, that gets us thinking in the right direction. But now I deflect to our commanding officer to address that. Thank you.
Okay, so you're absolutely right about that. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bavar. The first officer on scene is going to try to ascertain, is there something I can do to help this person? Is he in distress or is she in distress? Are they actually homeless, or are they working 3 jobs and they just fell asleep on the subway car? Is it a packed subway car and there's people who are standing, or is it an empty subway car and he missed his stop and he has to reroute backwards? There's a lot of different aspects that might go on there. Now, I know we're all jumping to the same conclusions. We're thinking about the worst of the worst. But the fact is, every police officer on the street is going to go there and try to help the people that they're interacting with. You're talking about quality of life. Now, a common one that we get in every precinct around the city is ringing car alarms. Okay, so the officer can go there and he can write a summons if the car alarm goes off for more than a set period of time. But is that really helping the neighborhood? The car alarm's still going off. And the person who might be working 2 or 3 jobs now has another $95 summons that they have to pay that they're accountable for. Now, most officers that I know, and what we try to impress upon them is, isn't it going to help everybody a little bit more if you take an extra couple of minutes, maybe run the license plate number, find out where that person lives. Maybe it's an apartment building right on that block or in a block nearby. You can go upstairs, you can knock on the door, you can ask them to come outside. Maybe they didn't realize the alarm was going off. You've helped them. You've helped the community, you've helped the neighborhood, and that is truly addressing that issue.
I was quoting what the commissioner said. It was coming from the commissioner that she specifically talked about people that are sleeping. By no means does that mean that that person is a criminal. It is a quality of life issue, is what she had talked about. And that's what I brought. I know Suzanne has.
To imply anything, I'm sorry.
What?
I wasn't implying.
I know, but it was coming straight from her. Suzanne? Can you unmute Suzanne? Is Suzanne unmuted?
She's unmuted, yeah, but I'm not sure. We can't hear her. I'm going to try to unmute her again. Let's see if that works. We can't hear you if you're speaking. So.
Suzanne is talking. I can't say. Is Suzanne actually?
No, there's nothing coming out of her mic, so
Raise her hand again. Judy, Judy's hand is up again, and I thought that there would be a million questions.
Okay, I also had a question. Yes, he's still with us. Captain Magliente, I had a question for you. I happen to be co-chair of the Parks Committee. So you fit right into our bailiwick. I wanted to know what you thought about. We had heard at Transportation last month about the new drive study. And if you had any thoughts on that, and if so, would you share them with us about redoing the roadways and the use of them?
Well, From what I understand is that the drive has not been redone since cars were allowed on it. So the study was done to make it more compatible and safer with its current use. So it would have some raised roadways that would help, slow people down. I know I've seen some bicyclists go flying through the park, too. There's been a proliferation of electric scooters and stuff like that. So the drive study to redo the park was done by the Conservancy, and they hired and contracted out an engineering group that redid the study, and they're working with DOT really to make it happen. And it's going to start with some changes coming up, I think, very soon. And it's just I think an update that's been a long time coming.
Yes, you're right about the roadways needing repaving. Therefore, the community board did pass that part of the presentation. However, much of the meeting was spent discussing the electric bikes and all kinds of electric vehicles in the park and the problems with bicycles. And I was wondering if you had any, and DOT, I understand, is doing a study on that that's supposed to be done in the spring. If you had any thoughts on that.
Electric bikes have been proliferated over the last like 5 years, where we see electric bikes, electric scooters without pedals. Some of these devices are extremely fast. It also makes them very difficult to catch and unsafe to catch too, including some of these ones that are highly illegal, which are the one-wheel devices. Have you seen these where people they stand on one wheel and they fly at a super high rate of speed? And then there's no helmet requirement for some of these devices too, which is very dangerous. I've seen a number of accidents from where I was before this in the 10th precinct, where people are flying on the west side with no helmet on, and they've wind up dead, or in one guy basically incapacitated for the rest of his life. So I mean, there is a lot of catching up to do with these electric bikes. We're hoping in the spring to try and put together some kind of bike unit with some cops on bikes to help with enforcement and stuff like that. But just like Inspector Zuber is having here, we have serious personnel shortages in the park as well, as everyone is experiencing.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. And maybe we'll have you come to one of our parks meetings.
Yeah, I mean, we list about 72 officers assigned to the park, as Inspector Zuber has 120. He's down almost, from his head count. When we're working with, considering retirements and people we have out, military leave and educational leave, we're working with about 58, 60 full duty cops in the park, police officers.
Wow, that's difficult. You have a really large area to cover.
Yes.
I'm going to ask, I think, Judy, you will make a resolution about doing something to counteract recidivism and possibly bail. Do either one of you have any suggestions how we could phrase it? We understand there was something unfair. The reason it was changed, and sometimes it's the pendulum swing, because they felt there was some unfairness, that people with fairly minor offenses.
Barry, maybe you can raise your hand.
Oh, Barry wants to raise his hand.
Yeah,
So-
maybe Barry can help with the wording. He's
Okay.
on resolutions.
Sorry,
And-
Ellen's also raised her hand as well. Just
Who
wanted
did?
to
Sorry,
Ellen.
Ellen? Okay, Ellen. Let's do Ellen first and then Barry will help. But I'm wondering if the two of you can help us a little bit in what you would want and what you think would be fair. And
No, unfortunately, that's not something that we would be able to get involved with. I'm relatively certain that people within the department or within law enforcement who could, but at our level, as I said earlier, we're here to enforce the laws that are on the books, and nobody's asking us. What I would recommend, though, when it comes to any of this, frequently the people who are passing the laws, often with really good intents, they're not speaking to perhaps victims. Yes, maybe there were some people who felt bad, but probably not the victims of these crimes and these recidivists. But talk to the end users, talk to the professionals, the people who have been in that field for a long time. I don't know the first thing about engineering. If I wanted to build a factory, I would have to bring in engineers. If you wanted to pass something that drastically affects the criminal justice system, speak to the professionals in those fields.
And who's the professionals? Do you mean the policeman on the beat?
Well, you can certainly do that. I mean, we can talk to anybody. Any of these elected officials could have come into our office and asked, what are the possible second and third order repercussions that we're not foreseeing here? And that's something that just through 2 decades of experience that we might know something about that. And if we don't, then one of our colleagues most likely will.
Okay, we will do it. I'm going to just say on a personal level, I walk a lot, we'll come back and walk the streets. When stores close, it's very dark. And I think darkness adds to a sense anyway of insecurity and that things are unsafe. I purposely moved to Second Avenue because there were restaurants and bars and things, and I feel I could walk as a single person and a mature person my mother would say I wasn't mature, but an older person alone, and there's lights and people, but there's blocks that are absolutely dark. And we want to keep our stores open. And I think that's one way of doing it. Barry, anybody else besides Barry that have their hands raised?
I'm unmuted.
Oh,
So-
okay, Ellen. Oh, I forgot Ellen. Yeah.
So this is a question for Inspector Zuber. I'd like to kind of reframe what I think you said. What I think I heard you say before was that when the police were defunded, the social workers were supposed to be funded to kind of balance the amount of people working with people committing crimes. And I think I heard you say that the social workers were also not funded. So that part of the balance is now imbalanced, so there's a limit in the policing, but there's also a limited number of social workers that are supposed to be taking up the gap. Is that true?
I don't know specifically about funding aspect. I can say that the units that we had within the department were completely abolished. I can also we went operations when the outside agencies, our partner organizations like services, when they go, they will not go without the police. So we have to be there or else they will not keep those appointments on the street. So it never succeeded in taking us out of the equation. It just made us be there with the extra organizations, sanitation, department.
Right. I remember we had a meeting, this committee had a meeting right after the defunding and all with two of the, I won't mention names, but 2 elected officials. And when I said, well, who are the social workers? Do you have them yet? And the answer was, well, that's a problem. So you get rid of the police and you don't have the social workers. And Ellen, my memory also is the social worker was not going to take care of the criminal, but just somebody on the street, somebody that may be urinating or defecating on the street, not the criminal. That's a police job, I believe, and not a social worker's job.
Well, I had the privilege of interviewing every single one of the DA candidates, and asking them this question. So since I'm not here, I might be able to copy a little bit about what they said, which was that the community, that when they had when the police were doing the broken windows, stop and frisk, that period of time, there were many people arrested, kind of swept into the system. And because the courts were not working fast enough, they were in jail for a very long time, just waiting for a hearing, waiting. They may not have been even doing anything, but they were swept into the system because they were arrested because they were stopped. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We are not in the business. We don't walk onto a street and say everybody on the street is going into the system. Everybody who is arrested is because the police officers who are there have established probable cause. means there's probable cause that a crime has been committed, and that person is the person who has committed it. So whether they were kept waiting for their term to come to trial, for their case to come to trial, that's a separate issue. But we're not walking in and saying everybody on this block is coming with us. That's not the way that anything is done.
And two things have changed, Ellen, since then. One is cannabis is legalized, which I think was a tremendous boost. I think stop and frisk, there was something on it, but basically is much less than it was in the old days. Am I right about that? You have to be much more careful with stop and frisk than.
We've changed the way that we document it, but it is still very much part of police work. It's not called stop and frisk anymore. It's the levels of encounter. But it's still the same basis where we have reasonable suspicion, we have probable cause, and that's what leads to in an investigation to an arrest.
But the numbers of stop and frisk is much less. Am I right?
Yes, because absolutely, it was something that was a tool that was utilized differently then, and it was characterized much differently. Now we're just keeping track of the people that we're actually stopping, the people that we're actually speaking to. One of the issues that we had that was passed last year was the level 1 encounters. So if we're speaking to somebody on the street, how do we have to document that? Where in the past we did not document those low-level encounters. For instance, how many times a day does somebody go missing? And, in Central Park, a child goes missing. So part of the concern was it was going to take police officers off the street because they would have to spend so much more time documenting the fact that every time they showed somebody a picture, have you seen this child? They would actually have to stop and say, now, may I have your name? May I have your address and your contact information? Because we did have this interaction.
And you have to do that, or that was?
Yes, that was passed.
You still have, okay. The third thing is we do have a few more judges, not enough, but there has been an increase in the number of judges that would hopefully speed up trials and do it. Ellen, we know what the problem was. However, we have a problem now. We can't say, and therefore don't do anything. I think Judy feels. Barry, is there anybody else besides Barry that's hand is up?
We have a whole list of people who want to raise their hands.
Okay.
So
Would you do me a favor and call on them?
yeah, Suzanne, she wants to speak again. She got her mic issues resolved. So
Okay, great, thanks.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I just really wanted to say thank you to everyone for hosting this meeting on Zoom so that it was convenient for me to attend. And I want to thank all the speakers from the precinct. And I appreciate this very thoughtful discussion that is trying to, take in all the views. And I support everything that's being said. So I will look later on the website for ways to contact you, Barbara, and the other members, if I can be of assistance.
That's great.
Just as a community member, yeah.
If we pass
Thanks
the
to everyone. This has
resolution,
been very thoughtful.
right. If we pass a resolution, it's just in the committee level. The third Wednesday, you could look on the where it is the full board meeting where we will come and ask for for approval on the full board. So if you're interested, please either Zoom in, but preferably come to our meeting. If you look on the calendar, you'll see. Thank you, Suzanne. Anybody else?
Robin is next. Oh, you're not muted, Robin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I go to the police precinct meetings, and it's so interesting because you develop such a compassion for what they're trying to achieve. And what bothers me so much about, and we had this discussion this week, about the judges, is that they don't seem to understand the discomfort and quality of life issue that people who are watching all these shoplifters are creating in the community, the discomfort. I have seen so many shoplifters that just walk out the door. I don't know why people hire security at all. They're not allowed to touch them. And they do it with such impunity. It's shameful, and it makes me not want to go back into any of those stores because they seem so vulnerable. And there's something about I understand that there are minorities that are apparently targeted, but it seems that these no bail laws definitely need to be looked at again because it's extreme. Everything now is extreme. The breaking of these laws with shoplifting are extreme enough to make me uncomfortable. And I've been living here for 50 years just in Manhattan. And I don't know what else to do about it. It makes me so uncomfortable just to walk out the door. Just the breaking of laws with electric vehicles. Nobody follows any of them. I clench when I leave my apartment, wondering how I might get killed that day. And I don't see how that's a way to live. So something has to happen with these bail laws where with people who are constantly, if you commit 20 crimes, how are you on the street? And how is the community supposed to feel safe? It's impossible.
Thank you. Who is next?
Sahar.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. First of all, thank you for this wonderful meeting. It is truly amazing. And so I thank you, Barbara and Wilma, for organizing it and for these amazing speakers. I had actually, one of my questions was what Robin just mentioned, was, these thefts that are happening at stores, and because of which many of our businesses are closing off. Like I know one on 79th and 2nd, Gristeri is closed off just because of this particular reason. So wanted to know that how can we resolve that? Like, and I think that's what we are discussing. And, it's like kind of very, I think like I feel the same way as Robin, that it is so, like, it's very worrisome. So what is the minimum number? Is there a minimum amount of theft that somebody has kind of engaged in and then they are taken in? Is there an amount? First of all, that, because we see that, because my husband even saw this, that there was a person who came in, took things off. The salesperson at the counter was like literally screaming, "Don't do that." And the person came, took all the little items in Gristeri's and just left, and nothing was done. So first was that. And may I ask the second one? I mean, I'll ask both of them and then you can answer one by one. The other one was, I just heard that you mentioned that, like, of course, I'm sure you have statistics of which avenues are or which streets have more, crime that you must have seen. Do you put your, officers, like, kind of, do you plan it accordingly? That these are the streets, avenues that we're seeing more, as Barbara mentioned, that some of those are not lit up, the restaurants are not there. So do you put more on that and then less maybe on ones that have stores and more restaurants open? So do you kind of plan yours because of, the numbers that have reduced?
Absolutely. And we call that our deployment. That's why we're always stressing to everyone, if you see a crime being committed, please report it to us right away, because if it's not something that's reported, it's not something that we are necessarily going to know about. And it's so important for us to know exactly what's happening, exactly where, and exactly when, so that we can change our deployment as needed. And that's something that we do on a weekly basis. It's something we do sometimes on a day-by-day basis. That 2 people were robbed on Fifth Avenue. That changes things. We're going to make sure that we have more of a presence on Fifth Avenue, because we know from recidivism facts that those perpetrators are more likely to come back to that location. And why wouldn't they? They've gotten good targets there. So first and foremost, it's about addressing that crime and hopefully making that apprehension and stopping further victims. But it's about making that particular community there in that neighborhood feel a little bit more secure. It's all perception, but we have to do that. And we do that not just with crimes, we do that with quality of life. We do that with our traffic infractions. If there's many collisions, many vehicle accidents that are happening at one area, well, that's something that we need to pay attention to. What are the contributing factors there? What can we do to help to prevent any further accidents, any further injuries and loss of life? So 100%. So please stress to your friends and your neighbors, your community councils, when you see something, please report it. Please report it. Unfortunately,
911, where do you report it to?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to 911 goes into a statistics that's automatically giving the results.
So A lot of different ways we track that. We track just the 911 calls, and then we track the reports that we actually take. And a lot of people have told us in the past that they're hesitant to call 911 because they don't want to burden the system. Well, in that case, you can call 311, but it's not a burden. As Ambassador Guevara said earlier, a lot of this onus comes back to the police departments because we're the ones that are here 24/7, 365 days a year. So if you call 911 and it turns out when you're talking to the operator, it is something that doesn't rise to the level of the police or the fire department or EMS, maybe it is a sanitation issue. They will redirect that to the 311 system for the appropriate agencies to handle it. So when in doubt, call 911.
Okay, that's good to know.
Is it,
Block
is it,
Don't-
sorry.
mail to your elected official. You can do all that also if you want to, but call 911 so that we're aware of it and we can address it in real time.
And is it just through calling? Like, is that the only mode, or is it like maybe somebody, like a system that you have online that someone can just SMS, or, like an email? Like, are there other venues as well?
The recent upgrade to our system that in certain instances you may decide that you can text to 911. The issue we have with that, and it's better than nothing, but when you
Right.
call on, that dispatcher who is very experienced is going to ask you further questions. That's going to help us to respond in a timely manner and to respond to information. So if you might think, hey, I just saw somebody wearing a blue sweater that committed a crime, and we get there and there's 15 people who are wearing a blue sweater, and which direction if it takes us a minute to get there, they could have walked a block and a half at that point. So we could be searching a much larger area. So if you call 911, please stay on the phone and answer any follow-up questions they may have.
Got it. Got it.
I'm just going to give one plug that I hope isn't political. There will be civil court judges are up for election. There will be forums. I think we should be listening to forums, and I think we should be asking judges what their idea of how they handle bail and so on can be one of the things that we ask during forums.
Said civil court. Is
I
that
don't know.
civil court or is that for criminal court?
They are or they are not.
Well, I'm asking you. You mentioned civil court judges specifically, so those are not ones that deal with crimes. Those aren't the district attorneys taking cases to court. Then
No, but they're the judges, and will they?
there's a difference between civil court and criminal court. Civil court would be not a police matter, not a crime has occurred, like small claims court type of
I
thing.
see. Oh, okay. But some of them go on to criminal court. So even if they're applying for, we're voting for them to be civil court judges, but they do go on and do criminal. I know that sometimes they're acting supreme and all, and we could hear what their attitude is. Besides Barry, who else is there?
That's it right now. Barry's the only one.
Okay, Barry. And who from the
Yes,
community
good-
board,
good
including
good
Bill and
evening, Good
Policy?
evening, Inspector. Good
Hi,
to see you. I'll keep talking. Good to see you, Inspector.
Thank
Very quickly, Judy is working on the resolution regarding recidivism. She'll be with you in a couple of minutes so that the committee can take a look at it and vote on it if it chooses. Barbara, you mentioned about the lights not being on in the retail stores on the avenues. It keeps the community in the dark for the most part. I have a suggestion. I don't know if it makes a hell of a lot of sense, but the East Midtown Partnership is a business improvement district, and I would urge you to meet with one or two of the presidents of the local bids and see if they can discuss with their members about keeping lights on their retail stores overnight to keep the community alive, literally, and healthy, because people will not go out necessarily in a darkened area, but if they know the lights are on, they may be more willing to participate in the community. That's my suggestion.
And I'm going to talk to Alita.
And a very happy Valentine's Day.
Right. Lead a small business, I would love to do it, and let's talk about that. But do you want to phrase a resolution? I thought that's what you were going to do.
Regarding the bids?
Yeah. No.
No, Judy's working on the bail. She's
Okay.
Yeah, she's
Send that to me.
she's put my handcuffs away, and we'll have a good evening.
Okay, great. Thank you, Barry, and we'll talk about it. But I think that could be a small business issue also, that committee. But thank you. I'd like to work with it. Judy?
Bill also wants to speak.
Sorry?
Bill and Sahar also have their hands up.
You want to unmute?
Why don't they speak first, Barbara? Why don't?
Yeah, are
Bill
you
hasn't-
unmuting? Yeah. Are you unmuting them?
Yes.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's Bill.
Yes,
Yeah, hi, Bill.
I'm in agreement that certain aspect of the bail reform may need to be amended or modified. But I believe that we need to have much more detailed discussion. What was the bail prior to the reform, or what led the legislature to reform the bail? And the issue here is that it appears to be a low-level crime with the issue of the bail reform. I don't hear any conversation going to high-level crime. So it seems to be working for the high-level crime, but it's not working out for the low-level crime. So I think we need to have another discussion to invite the Bar Association to educate us what is happening, what was the law back then, what led to the change, or a nonprofit law firm also give us their perspective as well. As soon as we get a detailed discussion, then I will suggest then we can propose a resolution at that time. That's my suggestion.
I would include the legislators also, because they have
Yes.
to be here to speak about it. I know that they were involved with it. You don't think speaking out at this point, when there's so much, I would like to see a resolution at this point that's maybe general and say to look into it, something that isn't saying if you do 3 crimes or 5, nothing specific, but something to say that what we hear is that going back to some sort of bail would.
I agree. I'd like to ask the question to the inspector. Have you noticed from your office, from the police department, DA's office, what the statistic between low-level crime to a high-level crime?
Well, I'm not certain what you mean exactly by a low-level crime and a high-level crime. Where are you personally drawing that line?
I don't know. I mean, low-level crime would be nonviolent crime compared to high-level crime, felony.
Well, nonviolent crime can also be a felony. Like I said, a burglary is not
Okay.
a violent crime, but a burglary can very easily turn into a home invasion if when you break into the apartment, there's a family that's there. So
Okay.
it's very much a gray area, and I completely understand what you're saying. So we view things individually. So a low-level crime for us might be like a petty larceny, like a shoplifting for low-dollar value goods. But as many of the other participants here have said, when that adds up time and time again, the low level, that line gets blurred. When you have stores that are closing because they're completely unprofitable and they're losing money. I had this conversation a while back with one of the elected officials, and the comment was, well, I don't care about that. They have insurance. Well, it's easy to say that a corporation like a CVS or a Duane Reade has insurance, and we're really not worried about that. But when they close, the people who work there are losing their jobs. They're losing their health insurance. They're losing their way of sustaining their own families. Not only that, but these are the stores that the people in the neighborhood depend upon. And that might be very difficult for some of our neighbors here to walk an additional 5 or 6 blocks or 10 blocks to go to the next store. These are the stores that were opening hours early or staying open hours late for the most vulnerable people during COVID to go so that they can go and get their medicine. They can get the groceries that they needed to survive during the lockdowns. So everything does have ramifications. And that's what I was trying to say before is, while a lot of the people who are passing the bills may have had good intentions, their own personal intentions, there's second and third order consequences that you have to consider that we feel were not considered. For instance, one of the aspects of the bail reform law is as long as you don't have any open cases on you, you are not eligible for bail, which means if you've been arrested 10 times And when your court date comes up in 2 months, if you just show up at court and it doesn't go to trial at that point, well, that case is still not technically an open case. So that you can, every time they go out and they get arrested and we say, well, why aren't they eligible for bail this time? Well, because they showed up to their last court date. So there's not any kind of punishment. As I said, you're just encouraging them to commit more and more of the same types of crimes. And a lot of the times we do see, not necessarily in this neighborhood, but in other neighborhoods, those low-level crimes do lead to higher-level crimes in your terms. They lead to violence. It's very easy to steal from a CVS, and when that security guard stands in front of you and says you can't leave, well, you push him. And now that low-level crime is now a robbery because you used force, and you got away with it. So the next time you come back and he stands his ground, you push him a little bit harder, or you threaten him with a knife or a box cutter. And if you threaten him with a knife or a box cutter and you get away with it, it's not hard to say, well, hey, I can't go to jail for this one. Now you're actually going to use that. Now that's a robbery and an assault and potentially something even more serious that could have been avoided if that person had been stopped 5-10 times ago. And they wouldn't have even occurred to them to take it to that level. And I'm speaking from experience. It was before I was here, I worked in Central Harlem, and we saw that exact thing play out time and time again, especially with the juvenile.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I'm just going to remember many years ago, I went to a town hall meeting with Liz Kruger, who introduced at that point, it took years to happen, the legalization of cannabis. And her main reason was this is how people were arrested and then they couldn't pay bail and they were, they were in jail. So we've sort of taken care of that because I believe nobody is going to be arrested for having, the cannabis that they're using, low levels of that.
And third order consequences as well, because if you go to any community council around the city, one of the biggest complaints now is that everywhere smells. So it's been decriminalized. And by the way, nobody was going to jail for marijuana for as long as I've been a police officer. You may spend a night in central booking before you see the judge in the morning and get released, but you were not going to jail for that. Now it's completely legal, and now that's a huge quality of life concern that so many people have.
Yeah. It used to be smoking. We have less smoking now. It used to be cigarettes that were, now we have it. Anybody else? Who else can we?
Ellen has just with us.
Okay, Ellen.
You're muted.
So just so we understand what the terminology is, and I guess sort of two questions here. The terminology of unopened cases is, I didn't quite understand what you were talking about with the, now that they showed up at the court date, but they didn't actually, but the trial didn't actually happen. Is that?
That's correct.
That's okay. So that was a judge problem, or that was, well, like, why wouldn't the trial happen at that point if they show up at a court date?
Well, because a court date could be for any number of different hearings in the criminal justice system.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right.
I don't really know the criminal justice system very well. So
this is,
how would that be phrased? So, in the terms of recidivism.
I'm sorry, that's something that you're all going to have to do your own homework on.
We need your help.
We cannot help you with the terminology.
Give us the wording. Okay.
But listen, this has been going on now for 5 years.
Yes.
I applaud everybody for wanting to take action, but it's not something that you have to do tonight. Certainly start it, but
I'd like to start it because I think that then we could go to our legislators and have them know our feeling about it. But is there, without giving us word, and we won't necessarily take this, what would you like us to say? When would you like to say that bail must be placed?
I'm a police officer. If somebody is guilty of
I want to know, and I said we won't necessarily, do it, but we would like to hear.
Lock away the no. I think there has to be common sense. You're not talking about one aspect over another aspect, but you have to think about victims. You have to think about public good. And you have to think about public safety, and that's the business that we're in. Anything that makes the public safer, that makes our police officers safer, of course, we are going to support that. I would like to see something along those lines.
Thank you.
Barbara,
It's
Richard just wants
election
to.
time, so I think that the more that we sort of bring this up, and I know everybody is talking about safety, I think some of it is a perception. I have friends that won't go on a subway, and I don't know why, because I'm on the subway all the time. But and I walk the streets, but perception is meaningful. Anybody else?
Barbara,
Oh,
Richard
Chair.
just wants to. Yeah.
Yeah, real quick. So thank you again. I know in the interest of time, I think we're reaching 8 o'clock, but I also wanted to share, it sounds to me like the committee wants to have a discussion on resolution, and we don't want to interfere with your business, right? Because that's something that the committee needs to do to present to the full board. I think the great commanders have been here and answered a great deal of questions, which is, I think, what you wanted. I hope we accomplished that. But again, I want to be respectful of their time and yours. I'm gonna jump off the call at this time. If there's anything else that we can do or be helpful with, just like
Thank
to
you.
know that now.
And should we say goodbye to the two of you also, and just say thank you so much, and then we will grapple with wording and see if we have an agreement with it. I don't want to take more time either, everybody. We thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good
for
night,
inviting-
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night and stay safe.
That's right. You help us.
Mhm.
It's up to you.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Do we call on Judy now?
Okay, let me ask Bill a question. Bill, after the subsequent conversation, do you still think we need to have more discussion before we put a resolution on the floor?
Yes, I believe we need to have more discussion so we can articulate correctly what the resolution should be. But I don't know what we need to propose.
Okay, so then Barbara, I would propose, and maybe the inspector could come back for a short period next month, but maybe we could get someone from the DA's office. Maybe we could get Liz Kruger, Alex, or
And also-
Rebecca
And
to
also, I
come.
think we can get someone from the Bar Association,
Yeah,
and
we can't
someone
as
get
well from
judge.
John J. Collins of Criminal Justice. I think we can invite them as well to
Right,
give us.
and we might even think about, I don't know if he would come or can come, Jim Kleins, who was.
No, he cannot come. I believe me, I've asked him. I've asked
cannot?
him, Suzanne Adams, several judges. They are not allowed
They're
to
not
come.
allowed to come.
They're
They're not
allowed.
allowed to come.
Okay,
It is not he
so
won't come, but he's
forget
not allowed.
that. But
Right.
let's get the appropriate people, and meanwhile, during the month, we can find out, as Bill
Judy,
said,
Let me interrupt. Yeah, but
what it said
we have meetings
before.
every 3 months, and this is a committee that has many different things.
Okay, so
We're
then
not
we have
discussing-
plenty of time to plan it. We can find out what was in the law before, what's in the law now, and we can have, that way, when we pass a resolution, as Bill said, we'll have more concise information to bring back to the full board and hopefully get the full board to pass it.
Yes.
Is everybody comfortable with that? And maybe we can get, I mean, John, maybe we can get Will to give us a date earlier than that, because I think this is important, and it is election season, and I think our voices need to be heard one way or the other. And certainly, I think we're all uncomfortable with pendulum swings where we certainly understand why things were changed, but we are having a problem. And so is everybody comfortable with no resolution at all, I guess? Am I right, Judy?
Yes, until the next meeting. When we have the appropriate parties, we have enough time to put the appropriate parties together to talk to us next month. And it would really be good. I know it's hard to do, but if we could get somebody like Liz Kruger, who was really spearheading this, if we could get her to come rather than her representative.
He came to that previous meeting that I mentioned when they were talking about defund the police, which I think is not as popular now as it
Yeah.
was before. Wilma, are you still on? You're in agreement. Ellen, I think everybody would be in agreement with more. I'm going to try to get an earlier date to see if we can have just a continuation of this, because we have other issues we want to talk about also on this committee. And see if we can get an earlier one. So the suggestion would be it's representative from the state,
Yes.
somebody from John Jay, from where, Bill? Where from John Jay would you want? A police, somebody just like a regular police person
Oh,
rather than the
Or perhaps
inspector?
one of the professor there. I'm not quite sure. I can find out, look it up. We
Okay.
got someone from the Bar Association, the City Bar Association.
And the DA's office is important too.
Yes, we invited them and they didn't come. I wish a judge would come, but they won't.
Okay, but we have enough
They won't.
time now.
They can't.
We've
They
got a
won't, so they
couple of
won't.
months to plan this, so we have
Or
enough
maybe I'll
time.
try to get an earlier date. And I would also like to get a store owner. Looting isn't the only problem. I mean, it's the trains, the streets, we hear it. I also think it's the newspapers. I read Patch like many of us do. Every day they're talking about somebody that was hurt, killed, touched, whatever. And it's the perception. It becomes like, it's such a strong perception. I'm not saying that the incident didn't happen, but it sounds like it's an overwhelming, and if I walk out on the street, something bad's going to happen to me. And I don't think that's true. I think that's more perception, but perception is very important. So I would like to get a store owner also that talks about the effect, or some victim that talked about the effect of
Well, I
something.
think,
I believe that's
maybe
also important at the inspector mentioning the victim is now being
Victim,
heard. So the victim
right.
needs to be heard as well. So
Right.
we can get a different perspective.
Would you help us, Bill, get maybe an attorney, maybe a defense attorney? I could probably find one that talks about some incidents.
Yeah, I can help out. I will assist you offline and my suggestion.
Thank you. So everybody is comfortable. Is Wilma still online? I can't see. Is she still?
Connection during the meeting, she had not returned back. And
Okay.
yeah.
I think she would be happy with this also. And I think, is Ellen still on? I think she would be happy. She's our public member. Sahar, is she still on? She's not a public member, but she's a member of the community board. Thank you. I think this is an interesting, Ellen?
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing. It would be really nice if we didn't dilute this. The DA was elected on certain promises, and those promises don't seem like they've been, I mean, they've been fulfilled in certain ways. I'd like to know why there's not more social work, there's not more social work being done with the not with the victims, but with the perpetrators, like this person that keeps committing crimes.
That wouldn't be a
the low
social
level
worker,
crime.
Ellen. I don't think it was ever meant to be that, a social worker. I think they meant people screaming and doing things, the homeless people that may be acting out that are not a danger. I think it was always said that if it's a danger, it's a police issue. And we do have like the Lenox Hill that goes out, Goddard that goes out. I sometimes I
think
see.
what Ellen may be referring to is that the police each precinct was supposed to have 2 social workers.
Right. They didn't come.
Given to each precinct, and that they cut that program back out completely with the lack of funds, because these social workers were going to go out with the police when they had home calls and there were problems on the street. And now we don't have those people because there's no funding for them. That's what he meant by
the DA's office was supposed to have a whole social work staff.
right. But
they were supposed to be like a quarter of the department. What
It was-
happened? to that? Why
Yeah.
is that?
They
happening?
cut well, he said very clearly, they cut the funding for it.
It's more than that, Judy, because my memory, we had a meeting about it. It was supposed to be a different department. They took that aspect of the police away, and they were supposed to be part of the social work. What is it, the health department or whatever, to come and be trained how to deal with it. And
Yes,
I don't
but
know.
Barbara, they defunded the whole program.
Yeah,
That's what he was telling you. That's
right.
why we don't have it.
That's right.
Right.
And so that could be a resolution to say, we want, we would like to know, to not reinstate, but instate funding for
Social workers for the precincts.
I was going to
That could be a
exactly,
separate resolution, which we could discuss when we come back next month.
Well, why not now?
I was going to
I'll tell
propose
you
this.
why I'm a little worried. I'm sorry to be political, but this is election season. The DA is up for election. No Democrat anyway is running against him, but he is still coming around and talking. And there's council races that are going on. There are races that are going on now. And if we don't say this is a concern, I'm worried that our voices will not be heard. In 3 months from now, it's election season. It's too late already.
Right.
Well, you're dealing with two different things here tonight. One is a city issue and one is a state issue.
And if
You
you heard
just
me,
have to
you
keep
heard me
that
giving
in mind.
they're very intertwined. The money comes from
Yes, but the money one comes from the city and one comes from the state.
we can have separate resolutions with it.
Right.
I will say, if you listen to the commissioner's speech, she had promises of what she's going to do that to me was so exciting. It sounded like she was about to implement them. And I'm not sure if that's true. They were very good ideas, but we need them implemented. Ideas don't do it.
Now, when you have to have the funds. And this is budget season now. People are.
That's right. And
That's
that's
right.
why.
Have that.
So
That's
I would suggest that instead of having like this whole group of people from like John Jay, et cetera, that we actually just have somebody from the DA's office, somebody from the state, like Liz Kruger, and maybe the person from the police again, like
John Jay, somebody that Bill will help us with along the way. You don't want to do anything about funding the social workers?
I do. I actually want to do that.
Yes,
I think we should
that's
have
a
two
separate
resolutions.
resolution.
Yeah, we have to have two resolutions. That is
Yeah.
Now,
very,
that would be a separate one entirely.
Be a
Yeah.
separate issue, yes.
Do
Yeah,
you
two
agree with that,
separate-
Bill? Would you vote
Yes.
yes?
so
Yes.
that was something we could do now. So
Sure.
that's a resolution we
Well,
could.
Anybody want wording or should
I do recall a couple of years ago, there was a trial program with NYPD, there's social worker embedded with the NYPD, the police cruiser going around in the Bronx. I don't know what came out of it.
Didn't he just say today that there wasn't enough police officers to have the social workers go out? Because there's always has to be a police officer go with the social workers?
Well, he didn't say that tonight,
No.
but they
Did say
defunded the whole program, so it didn't matter about the number of police officers.
Oh,
The
He did say
social workers
something
are
about it.
social workers. They are not, they've had no police training. They go with the police officer.
They were supposed to also go to what was considered low-level crimes, but then there was that horrendous thing that happened when Adams first took on, where there was just a domestic dispute, and they went, and the police, one or two were killed. Yeah, two. That was when two young policemen were killed because that minor domestic dispute ended up being somebody with a gun and killed him. So that was the talk, whether do you really want a social worker to go there? I don't know if you want a policeman to go in there and be killed, but at least they were protected. Social workers won't have guns. They
No,
won't
well,
have
they're not supposed to, as I understand it, from their presentation at the 19th precinct months ago. When the social workers were coming, they were going with the police officer. They weren't going someplace on their own. The ones that were.
We have a resolution. Let's come to the chase. Should there be something, Sahara, do you want to phrase something? Is there something that should be said?
I mean, I think again, for the second resolution, because for the first one, we need from the DA's office and all.
No,
I
no,
think
this is, we're only talking about the social workers, not the
yeah,
other
the
one.
social worker, we should. Judy, do you want to word it in some way? I feel like we should have maybe we speak, do you want to speak about the money, the budget that goes for them since they've been taken out? Should we
Yeah, the
put
money
that in
was
our
taken
wording?
out of the police budget for the social workers, and that we feel that they're important to be with the police to deal with the
Maybe the quality of life issues?
yeah, the quality of life issues that we have to deal with. You know what? If we are all in agreement, if the board members are all in agreement, we can write something and put it together and pass it around. How's that?
Okay, so let's
Alright,
vote.
I like that.
Think of the exact wording now. Is
So
that okay
who's
with
still
you?
on? And I'm going to ask if it's okay. I mean, I know how Wilma feels about it, and I may include her if she agrees with a yes. I feel bad that she has such a tough time with her internet that she's off.
I have a suggestion,
Sure.
resolution. The suggestion will be it will be the city or the state shall implement a program to embed licensed social worker within the police department to assist officers in responding to individual in crisis or offering specialized support for mental health or substance abuse, homelessness, while improving the community outcome and promoting more effective policing.
That sounds terrific. And it would only be the city bill. This is not a state budget issue. It's a city issue.
Okay.
Okay. And I think that sounds terrific, and I approve that resolution.
And the whereases would be because we need more outreach, well, I don't know, the quality of, can we say quality of life? Can we add quality of life issues?
To improve the quality of life. I think we can end with that.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
We can make that a whereas.
You can
Yeah,
make
the
that a
whereas.
whereas.
Yeah.
Whereas to improve.
Okay.
Bill, do
Pick
you
up the phone if I call you guys, okay?
Yeah, Bill, you said it so well. Why don't you start writing it up and sending it to Barbara and she.
I don't mind.
I
If
think
not,
you
I'm
just-
not taking
you
notes.
just-
I need to see the YouTube what I said. They'll write it up. So.
You
Yeah,
know what,
I will.
Bill?
I
This
listen
is
to it.
this
That's
was
how I write my
recorded.
minutes.
This was recorded.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So
that's how I
we just
write my
hear
minutes.
back. We can just
That's
like take notes and like it can
Okay,
be
so it's Sahar, Barbara, Bill, Judy, Ellen. Is Ellen still on?
Yes, Ellen's still here.
I'd like to add one line to that.
Sure.
Sure.
In an attempt to reduce recidivism. No,
reduce.
No, that's a different issue, Ellen. The recidivism doesn't have to do with the social workers.
I don't.
This needs to be discussed at the next meeting.
actually.
Okay, I'm going to try to get a date at an earlier meeting. That would be the first thing. I'll bother Will tomorrow. I'll bother Bill also, but I'll bother Will tomorrow to try to get a date. I don't know if Will's still on. Is he, John? Is Will still on?
He's not. It's just
You could tell him that I was going to bug him. I was bugging him before. So
I
to get an earlier date rather than 3 months from now, because there's other things we want to do in 3 months. I have an idea for my next meeting.
Can I address what Judy just said? Because I actually think that that's incorrect. I think that the social worker, somebody who's chronically shoplifting is doing it as an income. And
But is that for a social worker though?
That's the social that's the social worker's job to figure out why this person keeps going back.
That is, I don't think that, I agree with Bill, Ellen. I think we should save that for the next meeting, and we should do a separate resolution on the recidivism problem. And I don't think the social workers are the solution to this recidivism problem. It's the bail that needs to be changed, the bail laws. So I don't think we should confuse the two.
And I think that's incorrect again. I think the social workers could potentially figure out why this person is doing it, and
They have a very tight budget. Let's use them where they're really needed. When they go into a home and there's a fight between a married couple, which is over 50% of the calls they go on, that's where they really need the social worker. Let's
And
not
the homeless
give this-
that are acting out, I think that that's
Yes,
a
and
situation.
the homeless on the street, whatever. Let's not give them another job to do when they've got plenty to do now.
Maybe in the whereases, I'll mention that there's, I don't know, I mean, we'll do it.
So in the resolution, I should also add domestic abuse
Yes, for the social workers,
for the
yes.
social worker.
Yes,
If
that's
a
very
family
important.
experiences domestic abuse. Okay.
Yes, because domestic abuse is really the reason why the main reason the police wanted them.
Right. However, that, as we knew, that maybe that's what happened. If you remember the first day, was it, or the first week that Adams became mayor, was when those two young policemen, one was newly married, that was killed, went in thinking they were going to break up a domestic situation, and they were shot and killed. I think both were killed, if my memory is correct.
Can
They-
can I just suggest something that, can we speak maybe with one of the, officers at the precinct and ask them that, what do you, because they've worked with the social workers in the past, now they don't have it, right? They could also identify if there are any other more, circumstances that we should add. I think Bill has added so many, but if there is anything missing, so that we have a very complete resolution, all those different variants, they could identify, we're thinking of many, but there may be something missing. And so that
You
our
know who I'm
resolution
gonna
is all
call?
incomplete.
Yes, I'll just
All-
interrupt. You know who I'm going to call, and Judy knows his name is Nick Viest.
No, Nick is the president of the 19th Precinct Council, used
I
to be
know.
the president of the board. He is not an officer, but we can call a
But
community.
he knows everything. I've talked to him
No,
about it.
Barbara, we should, following up on Sahar's comment, we should be calling the community affairs officer, either Brian Larkin or Anthony Nuccio. Mike Lombardi just retired Friday
Oh, did he? Oh,
after 20 years, yes. So, when he was giving those numbers about the numbers of officers, we lost a good one Friday. So we should maybe talk to Brian Larkin or Anthony about, is there anything else that we should be including besides,
The ones that Bill has mentioned.
domestic abuse? Yeah.
so we do have one resolution. I'm going to call up Wilma. I feel so bad that she couldn't stay on. I wish she had called in. And then I'll talk to Will tomorrow to see if we could get an earlier date. He's very often very strict about the calendar, and I really don't like, I try to not bother him, not to argue with him too much. But we'll try, and then try to get the others. And I know Bill's going to be a big resource for me, right, Bill?
Yes.
I was going to say yes before you had a chance to.
I can never say no to you.
Because I'm so charming, right?
Okay, so can we move to adjourn?
Thank you. This was,
Second,
Does
Good
that,
thank you,
Take care.
everybody.
You will.
this was great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Give me a couple of days to write the minutes. I need to eat